Hello and welcome to an episode of How Good Were They, the podcast where we look at some of football's greatest players and clubs and decide once and for all, how good were they? Today we are going all the way to the samba capital of the world. It's Brazil, and it is, of course, one of the greatest players that we've ever seen from when we were growing up.
Yeah.
A player who brought enjoyment and flair to the game, something that maybe we don't see much anymore. Ronaldinho. Thoughts?
Yeah, very much. Sort of the player that played with a smile on his face. That is the guy, isn't it? That's everything you knew about Ronaldinho. The tricks, the flicks. And you're right, he's very old school in a way. In some ways, when we think about it now, when we look back on football and how it's changed in the recent sort of last 20 years, he is someone who perhaps doesn't fit in anymore, certainly to a Pep world, something like that.
Yeah, and introduced to us in, I'll probably say 2002. Of course, the famous 2002 World Cup when England faced Brazil. I remember we were allowed to go into school early for that game, even in Wales. And of course, the incredible moment in the second half. England 1-1, and then Ronaldinho has a free kick miles away from goal. You think he's going to cross it in, and he lobs it over David Seaman to the corner. At the time, we all thought it was a fluke. It's a fluke. It's rubbish. Blah, blah, blah. And in hindsight, maybe it's gone. I think the narrative has shifted more to. I think it might have just been a bit of genius.
He's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, so let's have a look at his career first. Let's name some of the clubs he played for. So started off with Grêmio in Brazil, moved then to PSG, to Barcelona, where I think most people will remember him.
Iconic.
Amazing. You think of those games like the one against Real Madrid when he scores that amazing brace and it has the sound innovation. Moved to Milan, Flamengo, Atletico Mineiro, Querétaro, and Fluminense. So a real strong list of clubs there that he's played for, and he's pretty much iconic at most of those teams.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, for so many fans, it was the excitement of having someone like Ronaldinho, who was so excited on the ball, so exciting to watch. I think of him passing with his back and things like that, just things you can see from a normal player. And like I said earlier, doing it with a smile on his face. He was such a likable player, really. Actually, that's for football, that's quite out there because there's not many players that are universally liked. But I don't know many people who dislike Ronaldinho. You may have, as an England fan in that moment, been disappointed in him. You may have perhaps, as a Real Madrid fan, although, like we said, you get a standing ovation there, disliked him. But for everything he did, he was such a likable fella. And the other thing I think people remember him from is the adverts, isn't it? The Pepsi adverts, where he again is iconic, showing off those tricks and things like that. And it's a big part of our childhoods, like we said, 2002, sort of 9, coming up 10 years old. That is where we are remembering this guy just catching an imagination, because as a 10-year-old, you are gripped with someone who plays football like that.
Yeah, and you think of those tricks he used to do, and you go on the school playground and you the next day and you try and try and replicate them, and definitely would fail. But a lot of those tricks, the rainbow flicks and the elastic goes and stuff. So, tricks that had been around before. You think of players like Rivellino in the 70s, but I think brought it back to the modern audience, and I think
a new generation, isn't it?
Yeah, that kind of style of play, which is definitely something that we don't see as much anymore. Right, achievements. So, of course, after that famous goal again over David Seaman, he won that World Cup, 2002 World Cup with Brazil. I think that catapulted him then into world fame and as a world-class player. He won the Ballon d'Or in 2005 as well. So he was the best player in the world. I think he might have won World Player of the Year twice, the FIFA Player of the Year, which is a bit different, wasn't it, back then? He also won the Champions League 2006, 2 La Ligas with Barcelona, and then trophies then with PSG as well. So, a really good record, a good trophy cabinet as well. His goal record is pretty strong for his position because he wasn't a striker. He wasn't. I guess like an attacking mid winger, wasn't he? Really, he had the capability to play anywhere in that sort of front area, didn't he? 58 goals for Grêmio, 25 PSG, then 94 for Barcelona. So that's probably where he was most known. 26 for Milan, 28 for Flamengo, and so on and so on. So overall, 266 goals in exactly 700 club games, which is a nice little return there. Internationally, 97 games for Brazil. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
33 goals, so a really good record for them
Yeah.
too. Right. If you've not listened to this podcast before, I like to throw 3 curveballs at Gareth to maybe question the narratives we've been told about
Okay.
this player. Now, the narrative goes is that Ronaldinho was amazing. He was world class. He was the best player in the world. We'd not seen anything like him before. He won all this stuff, and then Pep and Messi came along, and Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, and they just took football to new heights again.
Messi replaced Ronaldinho in that side, metaphorically, but also literally, wasn't it? He made his debut coming on for Ronaldinho, and from that moment took the mantle from him, and that is part of the narrative, isn't it? In some ways,
and that's a famous picture, isn't it, of Messi, I think, having like a piggyback on the back of Ronaldinho, isn't it? And Ronaldinho, I think he said at the time, "You think I'm good? This kid, even better again." Right, curveball number 1. And I've said this for a long time. He had a very short prime. He was only world class for about 2 years, 3 years, 2004 to 2007. And I don't think you can really put him alongside the all-time greats who had significantly longer times at the top of the game.
Yeah.
I think Messi's still at the top of the game. Cristiano Ronaldo certainly, to 15, 20 years. Pele's, his run from 58 to 70 is like a 12-year period playing so well. Maradona was a lot longer. So you think Ronaldinho, if he wants to be put alongside those GOATs, he needed a longer time at the top.
Yeah, and I think that probably is a fair point with him. It was a short period for some of those players, you remember. But really, when you think about how good he was, it's very, very hard to bring him down in that way because he was so good for that period of time. Granted, though, it was short, and I think a big part of football today is longevity. And a big part of footballers surviving for such a long period of time is being able to adapt and fit into a new style of playing. And perhaps he was the natural flair player, the player that actually is quite tricky to fit into some sides. I think of perhaps a more modern example, like a James Rodriguez, blew people away at the 2014 World Cup, got the move to Real Madrid, even Everton. Never worked out because of that style of player that relies upon just flair and creativity. I think of maybe someone even like a Jack Grealish, brilliantly tricky and creative for Villa, and then moves to Man City, and they try and fit him into a system. And I suppose Ronaldinho didn't fit into a system, and perhaps that's part of it in terms of why the peak is short. But the peak is very good. That peak you can't forget.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The peak is so good, and it's got a Champions League in there, 2006.
Yeah,
it's got 2 World Player of the Years, a Ballon d'Or as well.
Big moments, massive moments. Chelsea is another one in the Champions League, and all those.
The goal is scored when he has a couple of little flicks of the foot, and then the toe pokes it into the corner. Beautiful. I mean, some of the goals he's got. I think his debut for Barcelona, he gets it and cracks it from about 30 yards out, barring in. He scores that overhead kick, doesn't he, as well? From he was one of the first players I remember seeing who could just pick up the ball in his own half, run past an entire team and score, and you'd be like, wow. Yeah. Because I'd never really seen that often. I mean, players like Maradona did it, of course, but they were before our time. So when we saw that happen, and this is a time where I think La Liga and stuff was starting to be shown more on Sky Sports. And Sky Sports News was on Freeview, wasn't it, at the time? So you could just click that on, and then you'd have the highlights from the night before, and they go, "Oh, you never see this Ronaldinho goal in La Liga," and it really brought it to a much bigger audience, and we could all see it. Okay, fair play. Okay, curveball 2, and this probably links to why he has such a short prime, but his discipline and his lifestyle. Now, we know he's a bit of a party animal, as are so many of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, and Brazilian. I mean, he had it all. He had it both going for him, didn't he? That he was a party animal. He was also Brazilian. That's just naturally what you do, I think, if you're Brazilian.
Exactly. But you think of players like Maradona, party animal. Paul Gascoigne. Really great players.
Best.
George
Robin Friday.
Yeah, Robin Friday. Yeah, Cardiff City legend there. All these top players, and sometimes our lives got Socrates. You mentioned him, didn't we, before? Yeah. But I think that those late nights, those inconsistent training habits, a bit of a reputation for not always taking the game seriously enough. Pep Guardiola comes in 2008, and he comes into his team. He's got Ronaldinho, and one of his first decisions is he's out. He gets rid of Ronaldinho,
which is crazy, isn't it? And it just doesn't wash, really, being that ill-disciplined at times for a side like Barcelona and a person like Pep Guardiola, and he finds his home in various other places, and ultimately maybe Brazilian football sort of fitted him in that way, that style there that I imagine, and certainly from reports, he could have his parties and then still go out and do sort of samba football on the domestic stage in Brazil. But I think that it just is part of who he was. It was part of his story, wasn't it? You think of he's quite an iconic image of the long hair. I used to remember sort of like baggier type tops in times. It wasn't the tight football tops you see nowadays. He wasn't someone who's perhaps, body was in the greatest of shapes in that way because of how he lived it. But again, that's the mythology of Ronaldinho. That's how he played. That's the style, and even amongst all that, he was still
didn't it?
incredibly creative, incredibly likable, maybe relatable in that way to certain fans. Yeah, I think that he possibly could have extended his career through being more disciplined.
Yeah.
Would we have lost something of?
Exactly. Do you want him to be? I know that is the big criticism of today. Do we want him to be stifled and made dull and boring? Because a really good point to that is 2006 World Cup. Brazil have an insane team on paper. Probably a better team than 2002 when they win it on paper. They had that front four of Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Adriano, Robinho, and it was meant to be like the best from forever.
João Benito,
and it should have been this amazing team. But they have Carlos Alberto Pereira in charge, who managed in '94 as well, who likes a much more pragmatic side of play, which is dogged Brazilian football for the last 20, 30 years now. And Ronaldinho wasn't able to really show off what he was really capable of in that team, because he was forced to do a lot more of the disciplined, track back, win it and play more for the team rather than be the flair, be the excitement. But I think in a way that actually worked against Brazil, because that's when he worked best, was when he was able to do his own thing. And he could go and get the ball and score past players, but he didn't have the creative license in that team to do it. And I remember watching that World Cup before the tournament. It was billed up as, this is Ronaldinho's World Cup. It's all about him. He's Brazil are going to win it again. Their team is ridiculous. Ronaldinho is the best player in the world, and he was rubbish. I remember being really disappointed.
They're a forgotten side in that 2006 World Cup, aren't they? When I think of that again as I guess then 13-year-old obsessed with football, this is the World Cup. Oh my gosh, I don't really remember that Brazilian side. They're not one that stick out, and that's not what a World Cup should be. A World Cup should be a strong Brazil and big moments that we do see from them in later World Cups. And as you said, it wasn't. I suppose you can't call it golden generation when they've had such good players, but it was
you can't
immensely talented group of players that should have gone on to break records, goal scoring records, flair records, and they didn't do that. But is that on Ronaldinho? It's tricky to say, isn't it?
I don't think it is, but I think he was restricted by the management at the time. Okay. Okay. Curveball 3. Too much flair. Not enough. Yeah, not enough. I don't know, but not a winning mentality. Just too much of a flair player. It's all about the tricks and the flicks, and ultimately that stopped him from having a longer career, a more successful career that he could have had.
It's hard, isn't it? I think maybe that sort of beach soccer vibe of Brazil, street football wise. Remember FIFA Street, the game FIFA Street?
Oh yeah, what a game!
Amazing game where you could
that was so good.
Play in a cage in Brazil. He was the best player on that game. He was the guy you wanted for that.
Oh, he was top stats. Yeah, top trick.
Unbelievable. And that is not 90-minute football pitch discipline, track back sort of football.
It's the streets.
Yeah, and he was ultimately, he embodied everything that was Brazilian football in that way, and where it comes up through that, learning to play with the tennis ball, all that sort of thing that you hear.
Futsal.
Yeah, exactly. And he perhaps wasn't that. And of course, that is a fair criticism because you look at it and when Ronaldinho top year they've had for years and years and years. And it's sort of him cutting to beat a defender, the style that he's doing there. And that's what he wanted to do. He doesn't want to necessarily
flick of the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not interested in discipline, put it out wide, all that. It is, I want to beat a player and I want to go back and beat him again and put it through his legs and then chip it with my back or whatever it may be. And that doesn't necessarily work in the most successful of football teams.
Yeah.
And I think that's something when we come to conclude, I'm sure we'll have to consider that, because when we've talked about in the past the greatest players of all time, one of the favourites to watch, perhaps not one of the greatest.
Yeah, I think if we did a list of top 50 players to watch, I think he'd be up there. He must be in the top 3 for that.
Yeah.
Okay, right, let's go to some quotes from others. We'll start with Lionel Messi, who we've mentioned in this podcast a couple of times. He says, Ronaldinho was the best of all. He welcomed me to football like a brother.
Nice.
Lovely.
Yeah, and he obviously didn't teach you bad habits.
So, no.
Yeah.
I think that was part of it, wasn't it? I think one of the reasons they got rid of him was to make sure Messi stay with a clear path. Right, Thierry Henry. He did things that made you believe in football again.
Nice.
That's nice, isn't it? I mean, you see that all the time now, don't you? You see people. I'll probably read it 4 or 5 times a week. Someone on Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever, makes a comment about how football's lost its way and there's no Ronaldinhos anymore. And I think that whole thing of made you believe in football again is a nice comment.
Yeah, I'm not. I've mentioned earlier, I'm not the biggest fan at all, Jack Grealish, but you could see that how modern football has pushed him to be a player that he's not, and certain players like that who you've got too much flair. We need to be more disciplined.
Let's think about players since Ronaldinho who sort of take up the mantle. Obviously, I think Neymar is the obvious one.
Yeah.
He brought the samba, the flair, the joy, the smile, the flicks, the tricks, the rainbow flicks and all that stuff. He's the obvious one.
Yeah.
You see players like Coutinho with the smile on his face was not used to, not anymore.
Yeah.
Who are those flair players now? Adel Taarabt, that was a long time ago as well now.
Yeah, well, it's James Rodriguez. But it's really tricky to put them into that.
Quadrado.
You think of the players who are Quaresma,
yeah.
Riquelme, people who
he's the same time, isn't he?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. But it's that sort of era of football that doesn't exist anymore. It is tricky to give you a modern one. Or maybe you see someone in League 1 or 2 doing something like that. You'll see clips of a player like that.
Lee Trundle.
Look at those skills. Yeah, someone like a Lee Trundle who was just obviously nowhere near as talented, but was incredibly creative and tricky.
Episode 8, Lee Trundle.
Yeah, I'd rather not. Swansea legend. But he was another incredibly talented footballer. You lose elements of other parts of his game, and he likewise again, didn't necessarily look after himself all that well and things like that. And it seems to go with it. It just go with the territory, isn't it? Neymar too. Enjoys the life outside of football. I suppose if you are that way inclined to play football like that, to not be disciplined on the pitch, you're possibly not going to be off the pitch either. It sort of comes hand in hand, really, isn't it?
Okay, and then Frank Rijkaard, who's his manager at Barcelona, says he changed Barcelona's destiny.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's a big thing to say, because there's been a lot of players in Barcelona's history who've been significant.
There is.
But I think it's what a signing for them at the time.
It was a resurgent at Barcelona.
Exactly.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
He was the start of what comes Messi and Xavi and Iniesta and people like that.
But yeah, they would have all played with him, wouldn't they? They'd have all learned from him, I imagine, as well, because Xavi was there before, wasn't he? But I think Iniesta. I think the Champions League final 2006. I'm pretty sure Iniesta's playing Deco. He's a really good team.
Yeah. And there'll be some criticism saying PSG at the time were a what would you call them today? It's tricky to not have a Premier League comparison that people criticise. The level of maybe a Tottenham or a Newcastle sort of thing. They weren't the PSG that we've just seen.
No, definitely not
dominate
PSG, no.
Europe. Barcelona was sort of resurgent and came back, and he played a part in that. Milan were not the same Milan that we'd seen.
No, they'd lost their way when he
joined. In that way, and then obviously playing in Brazil, we didn't see a huge amount of him. So another criticism you will hear is that he didn't play for great sides at their great heights, and that is something maybe people will take a knock on him. He didn't come to the Premier League, is another thing you'll hear as well from people.
Yeah, could he do it on a cold Tuesday?
All the stuff.
Yeah. Okay, hopefully I'll try and find a Pele quote for later.
I'm surprised.
We haven't got a Pele one yet. Right, okay. Legacy and influence. So let's have a look. So I think his general legacy is he maybe will fall in love with football. He made people fall in love with Barcelona before Guardiola came.
Yeah.
We all loved that Guardiola side. but we all kind of liked Barcelona before that because of Ronaldinho.
Yeah, exactly. I've always been Team Barca. I think everyone's naturally, inherently, Barcelona.
It's so funny, isn't it?
It is weird, and it's I love the Messi era, that 2008, 2012, all that business. But certainly for me, I love Barcelona before, and that's because of Ronaldinho, and that Chelsea game, like I mentioned earlier, those sort of things are stuck in my mind as like, this is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He inspired a generation of freestylers, attacking mids, wingers. Like in that position became like, it was always a pretty glamorous position, but I think even more so, especially the cutting inside.
Yeah.
He played on the left and cut onto his right.
Yeah.
Obviously then Robin made it really famous on the other side, but that's just a given now. You never see a winger run to the byline anymore. He was proof that football could be an art as well as a sport. So he's something like, beautiful to watch. And his highlight reels are unmatched for the sheer audacity that they gave us.
You're right. I think, as a highlight reel player, that is absolutely him. And that's often a criticism, isn't it? He's just like a YouTube.
A YouTube comp player.
Yeah. He is the ultimate one of that. But also sort of not in a bad way, because he's doing this on the grander stage. This is not just him doing it here and there. This is him doing it in Champions League runs, in La Liga title wins, in
World Cups,
finals, in World Cups. And you cannot take that away. And the fact that people speak so highly of him, he's still been involved in football afterwards in terms of like community football and things like that. He's someone who's given a lot back, and like we said earlier, he's someone who's not disliked
community service. Right. Let's hear what the fans say about him then.
Yeah.
What do our followers say about Ronaldinho? We asked on Twitter, how good was he? And here are the responses. Here's from Johnny, who's written for us in the past. He says, saw him several times. Absolutely brilliant. A mix of overrated and no words can describe him. A true street footballer that made it in the professional machines athlete era.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Envious of the fact you got to see him live flip.
I know, that's incredible. Then we got a nice gif from Robert Johnson of Ronaldinho just doing a few step overs past Gattuso. Okay.
Steve Barton, there are a handful of better players, but there were none who brought more joy to the game than Ronaldinho. None.
I agree with that.
Love that.
That's spot on.
Love that.
Michael Goals, who's clearly a Rangers fan, says he's the second greatest player to ever grace the football field, just behind Cyril Dessers. So I think that probably means he's actually the best player. Really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Martin Harrison, the best baller I've ever seen.
Yeah, not the best footballer, but the best baller, sure. Yeah. Nell says Soccer AM's Showboat is mostly just him for about 3 seasons.
Yeah, I imagine Showboat was invented for him. Yeah. And then, as we said earlier, Tim Metcalf says, could he do it on a freezing wet February night in Stoke? I'd like to think he could, but he wouldn't want to.
I don't. On those pictures, yeah. And that's how I would say. Heresiaka Menor says there's no words. No words to describe him. Fantastic. Okay, nice. So, lovely comments there from our followers about this, superstar footballer, Ronaldinho. Where are we going to put him then? Let's do the overall rankings. This is one of my favourite parts, where I ask you, where would you rank Ronaldinho in your all-time footballers? See top 5, top 10, top 20, top 30, and so on. Where does he go?
Oh, it's so tricky, this, isn't it? Because he's supremely talented. Clear that just everything about him was joyous. But where does that rank him? And without trying to be too biased on it as well, as one of our favourite footballers from a generation when we've grown up.
Yeah.
I think you could certainly make an argument that he's in the 10 to 20 range. Just outside top 10.
Yeah, sure.
Just outside top 10. A lot of caps, a lot of goals for Brazil, a lot of games, a lot of goals for his clubs. And the influence he had on so many matches, and so talented too. It becomes on what you rank them on. You rank them on just goals or on trophies or whatever it may be. I think you can certainly put him just outside top 10 for overall talent and impact on the game.
Okay, I think I'd have him. Yeah, maybe in that 10 to 20. I think that's a good place.
Tricky.
Okay, let's name as many as we can Brazilian players that are better than Ronaldinho. We'll go one at a time.
Pele.
Ronaldo, R9.
Are we just going sort of attacking wise, or are we
Just Brazilian players.
I probably would then go Cafu.
Okay, Cafu above.
I think so. I think
Oh,
the
okay. So
influence
Cafu's
an extended period is what we talked about earlier.
okay. I think there's not many better than that. Maybe Zico is going to be pushing it. I think he's going to be surely pushing.
So some would
Ronaldinho.
argue Neymar, personally not for myself, but I think some would argue Neymar.
Neymar's not a top 20 footballer of all time, is he?
It's funny, he's someone who in many years to come will probably have one of these, and I think I would be naturally on the more hesitant side with him, but some people really adore him and the impact he had on the goals, and he's obviously going on to become probably Brazil's all-time goal scorer and things like that. But certainly, it's not many. Some may say people like Roberto Carlos, but it's difficult as a left back.
Yeah, it's hard to compare, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard.
Anyone else? Fred?
Socrates, another very talented player, but not long enough. Also hit by Romario, but probably not.
Adriano's left foot.
Yeah, Adriano on Pro Evolution Soccer.
99 shot power. His song that is as well. Okay, right. Final verdict then. Was he great?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think he is what football. He summarises football, isn't he? There's the love and joy of the game that people cry out for now.
He plays football like how you imagine it as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's glorious.
Yeah. And how you want to play it on video games and how you want to play it. How you want to see it play. When Ruben Colwill for Cardiff, who's our most creative player, does something like that, a nutmeg, or whatever it may be, everyone in the stands gets excited.
Yeah.
It still happens on TV, Gary Neville will make a noise when he sees someone do something like that.
A back heel now.
And he did it 3 or 4 times a game, 5 or 6 times a game. It's amazing.
Yeah, you see like a back heel now, and it's like, that's amazing. Yeah. But back then, he was doing rainbow flicks.
Yeah. It's the way, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Constantly throughout a game. It's been a nightmare to mark.
Oh, insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd say he was a brief but blinding greatness.
Lovely.
Like that.
Lovely.
Okay, so Ronaldinho didn't dominate for a decade, but for his golden years, he was the most joyful genius football has ever seen. Not the longest reign, but one of the most magical. Nice.
Lovely stuff.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. Right. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can get a lot more of the Football History Boys by going to our socials. We have a YouTube channel. You can actually watch the podcast there as well at TFHBS. It's the same handle for our X or Twitter page. We've got Facebook as well. We have Instagram at the Football History Boys, TikTok at the Football History Boys as well. We even have a new website as well. A whole redesigned new website, and that is tfhbs.com. So check it out. Have a look at the new stuff. You can find links to our books on there. You can find links to our socials. You can find links to our YouTube. You can watch some of the videos on there as well. You can read all of our past articles that we've written over the years. Over 12 years now, isn't it? We're doing this. I'm sure there's quite a few Ronaldinho on there as well.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a broad span of stuff on there, and whether it's your YouTube or your writing or whatever it may be, do check us out in that way and what you enjoy. And I think we've always said about football is more than just score lines. I think Ronaldinho is someone who summarises that, isn't it? Football's about the joy that it brings, and he is someone who absolutely is that.
Absolutely. Right. Is that everything?
I think so.
Cool. We'll see you again for another one very soon.